The first company that we're going to learn about is DarkPulse, based on the information we have. It's a company based in New York. DarkPulse develops, markets, and distributes a suite of engineering, installation, and security management solutions to industries and governments on an international level. DarkPulse's ultra-high sensitivity infrastructure monitoring provides enhanced visibility to enterprises, allowing early detection of corrosion and system weaknesses before catastrophic failure. Speaking to us today from DarkPulse, very pleased to introduce Dennis O'Leary, who is a serial entrepreneur with significant international experience, having founded Sulu Electric Power and Light Corporation in the Philippines, a firm with expertise in utility scale power generation and solar energy. So Dennis, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, David. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Sure. So why don't you just introduce us to your company, DarkPulse?
Yeah, sure. Actually, DarkPulse is currently traded over the counter, and so a publicly traded company, fully SEC reporting, and fully audited. We actually started up in Canada in 2010. I had, I guess essentially purchased a group of patents based on this laser sensing capabilities called BOTDA. Basically, it stands for Brilliant Optical Time Domain Analysis. Really just using a fiber optic cable to sense changes in stress and strain using the scattering of light. And, that was discovered by a French gentleman called Leon Brion, over 100 years ago. And there's a few different types of distributed fiber optic sensing that utilizes what they call a bright pulsing system. Ours utilizes a dark pulsing system, or a technique, I should say. And that's why we have the name DarkPulse. And really what it is the way that we collect the data down this fiber optic sensing cable, which essentially could be deployed into any type of medium. It could be epoxied onto any type of, let's say wood, steel, like carbon fiber laid within carbon fiber sheets, anything you want to monitor the structural health or temperature in real time, the system can be applied to. The difference with ours and other systems use this bright pulsing method, I'll say. Ours uses a dark pulsing, and by dark pulsing it, it eliminates the signal to noise ratio issues that other systems have, and it just allows us to have this unbelievable amount of resolutions down in the 10 millimeter range, whereas a typical like fiber optic sensor anywhere from 3 meters to, let's say, 7 meter resolution, essentially making it very difficult to see more dynamic types of anomalies, I'll say. And I could give an example as we go, the difference between our system and other systems. But anyway, the technique's based on a series of patents. The company owns the patents, I guess sorry, I should explain. We're based in the U.S., but we also have a subsidiary based in Turkey, and we're also in India as well. And we've worked throughout the world, including the Middle East and Europe.
Mm-hmm. So as far as the patents that kind of seem to be the genesis of DarkPulse, were those patents that you were the inventor of, or did you buy the patents or license them in?
Yeah, actually, we bought the patents, and the gentleman that invented it, at least one of the three, had joined the company at that time. The invention was by Dr. Anthony Brown, who was a professor at the University of New Brunswick in Canada. And the original company was based in Canada. It was a spin out from the university. And then we took it into the United States and then took it public with a reverse merger. Anthony Brown is still in the company as the chief science officer. So one of the three inventors is actually in the company.
Mm-hmm. And maybe give us a very elementary explanation for how your technology is applied, maybe in the mining industry.
Sure. Yeah, I actually can give you a real world example. We were working with the University of Arizona, the engineering department, and actually deployed the system into their underground lab, they call it, their mining or mine training and engineering facility in Arizona. We did two different types of deployments. One was we actually essentially tied it off to the, I'd say the ceiling area of what they call the adit level. in that particular mine. It's called the SX mine. S is in Sam, X is in X-ray. And that is since we were doing temperature and temperature of air and airflow. And it's actually an interesting story because after we deployed and we had a series or a group of mining companies that were going to actually view this demo, there was a glitch with the ventilation system. They couldn't get the system to run for us. And we ended up opening up these steel doors at the end of the adit level to let, basically a breeze come into that level. And we turned on the system, and surprisingly, we were actually able to do the demonstration. We actually were showing airflow down to 1 CFM, which is pretty impossible, we thought, but pretty amazing to see. So essentially, what the system would do is it gives you air temperature and airflow throughout an entire, hard rock mine or underground mine, and essentially would eliminate the use of, weather vanes, where engineers essentially, after there's a blasting, there's a temperature check, and then there's also, an airflow check. And historically, they had been walking around with these weather vanes to take these readings, whereas we created an anemometer essentially, and so it's permanently installed along the ceiling inside again this SX mine, and we were able to again show temperature changes and airflow. So that's one opportunity. The other thing, we actually installed it into the floor of the mine, also in the adit level. And in that instance, we were actually showing the location of equipment, and then also materials, I guess displacement or materials that were, like, I guess the best way to explain, coming off of a vehicle as it drove through that adit level, where these deposits along the roadbed were located. So that was another thing that we had done. And then a third, I guess, interesting deployment would be, and this utilized the temperature sensing capability. We actually put it into a tailings pool, into the berm, the soil berm, to detect leakage through tailings piles. So, again, 3 real world deployments again in Arizona with the University of Arizona.
So, if you could explain a little bit more specifically, like when
Yeah.
I think of fiber optic cable, I'm thinking about telephone systems, telephone infrastructure. How is the fiber optic installed, or where is it installed in the mines that will help read temperature and airflow?
Yeah. So in terms of temperature and airflow, it's a single mode communications fiber. And there's a lot of different products out there now. And the best way to describe it is the dirtier the fiber, the better. Because you want increased scattering of this light going through, whereas with telecoms, you want a very clean fiber. So there's single mode and multi-mode. Um, Most communications use multi-mode. There are single mode applications throughout the world as well. But in terms of distributed fiber sensing, there's always a single mode, single core fiber, and again, as dirty as possible. So in the instance of doing airflow and air temperature, we essentially had the fiber was encased in stainless steel, and a very low current was actually run through this stainless steel jacket, which caused a temperature differential between the fiber inside and then the outside stainless steel, and essentially created an anemometer for us. And that gave us airflow and temperature. So we could actually display airflow and temperature along the same, piece of fiber optic cable, and
So, so do
and
you
again,
have
all
to?
in real time.
Okay,
Mhm.
so if you're doing some work for a mine, do you have to apply the fiber optic along the walls or the ceiling or the floor of the mine? Um, in other words, if the mine was 500 feet deep, would you have to go all the way down 500 feet, or could you go 200 feet and it could detect what's happening 300 feet further?
Yeah, no, it essentially gets run along the ceiling at each level of the mine.
Okay.
And where the fiber actually is hanging from the ceiling, essentially we use a metal hanger. Uh, that's where we can actually show the temperature and the airflow. So the cable has to actually be along the ceiling of the area that you want to monitor.
Hmm. And as far as the
It's
actual
not much like
installation,
off axis or anything. So.
okay. So as far as the actual installation, is that done by the mine? It's the mining company with their own employees, or is that something that Dark Pulse installs, or do you just provide the fiber optics?
Yeah, Dark Pulse would do the installation. I mean, if it was a situation where the mine company felt they had to do the installation, essentially, because we've worked with subcontractors in the past where we'll have a management team that would assist with that. But generally, we do the installation. Once the fiber is installed, we run a test to make sure there's no, in terms of doing the air thing, there's never sort of like a kink or pressure on the when you're burying the fiber, you have to do this additional testing to make sure that it's, let's say, free and clear. But basically, we run, just like a light test at the end. And then essentially, you're plugging that piece of communications fiber into our black box, the piece of hardware. And actually, the way we have the software now is the unit self provisions itself. You go live, pretty much at the installation. And then the other part of it is with the software is the user interface. That interface is available anywhere in the world by the internet. And We actually have it's a 3D VR capable user interface, and we're actually upgrading it now, where there's an AI component that will kind of assist the user interface as well too, making it a little bit more real world and look, a little bit more capability in terms of analytical types of things based on the data that the system's actually downloading and putting into the software.
Hmm. How long does it take you to send your people to a mine to install the fiber optic cable?
So, like again, it's going to depend on the end user. There's variations in the cables that we would use. So there's going to be an engineering assessment, usually a LiDAR scan, and then sort of background processes is ordering the type of fiber that is determined that will best suit the need of the end user. That's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to have delivered on site. And then while that 4 to 6 weeks of having the fiber ready to be put on site, the hardware units are sort of being configured for the next phase of the installation. Once we have we know when the fiber is going to reach the job site. We have a team of installers that would actually go and then start the fiber optic installation. Depending again, what the circumstances are, if we're burying cable or if we're hanging cable, that's going to vary by a few weeks to, maybe a few months. Again, depending how much how much fiber we're going to install, how we're going to install it, and what it's installed into. And then again, essentially, once the fiber is connected and it's tested, we would plug in the unit, and then the unit's actually provisioned remotely from our team in India. And So again, it's hard to give a real timeline because it depends on how long the fiber we're running and what we're actually trying to accomplish. But I would say maybe 3 to 6 months, would be a good average to say.
Hmm. And I would imagine that you spend some time negotiating union, with union rules or liability. If one of your people gets hurt, I would imagine that would take time too. How many
Sure.
installers do you have on staff?
We don't have installs on staff. What we do is we actually subcontract, and then the management team is led by Anthony Brown, who oversees the installation. Typically, it's in countries it's more efficient to work that way, especially with various certifications. So just having generally a fiber optic installation company or a communications company that's versed with handling fiber optic cables would be who we deploy. And then again, just a management team to oversee the installation.
So I would imagine Dark Pulse is one of the first contractors that a mine would hire, right? Because you need to know what the airflow is like before you start sending people deep into a mine. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it would be an engineering team first, go on site. Again, get what the custom requirements are. LiDAR scan the mine itself, and essentially build an installation document, a scope of work. and again work with the end users. And then again, the next step would be the scheduling, just like any other contracting type of job, where again we're purchasing materials and hiring subcontractor, generally in country where the installation is. Just it's more efficient, money wise, time wise, and again, depending on country, there's different certifications and there's different rules and regulations based on employees from what country can work into certain countries. So again, we would hire a subcontractor in the fiber optic installation space, and then bring our supervisory team, on site, and then again project manage the installation of the fiber. We would perform the final testing, final connection, and then the remote provisioning takes place again from India.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the benefit to the mine operator of having your fiber optic installed, is it more along the lines of keeping their people healthy and safe, or does it impact the process of mining? Does it, when you're mining, does it matter what the airflow and temperature is?
Yeah, I mean, especially like in areas where they're expanding the mine and there's blasting, ongoing blasting. This is, having this system in place, you can actually see in color 3D in real time temperature and airflow throughout the entire, again, where we're installed, but let's say throughout the entire mine. So you can monitor those temperatures in real time and understand when you can send personnel back in. And then the fact that we only require one fiber, and fiber optic cables come in packets. There's also an ability to add communications and video as well. So there's also the safety features. Let's say there is some sort of incident, there is a collapse. You can visually see inside the mine. You can speak with anybody that's in the mine at the time. And then again, you're also looking at airflow and air temperature at the same time. So it's a time saver in terms of, as the mine is working and they're expanding the mine. Again, there's a cool off period, and you're sending people in to kind of test when you can, essentially begin, the next step of the operations. This is something that's already in there. There's again, and then taking those LiDAR scans, and then having a VR capability. Essentially, you can walk the entire, whatever level of that mine that you're working in, and see it in real time in 3D in color. And again, you're not putting people, let's say, in harm's way, or again, saving time in terms of, trying to figure out when you can actually send somebody in there to go through the next step. You can actually see it visualized, and again, with the VR capability.
So, does Dark Pulse affix the cameras to the fiber optics, or is that the job of a different company to do that?
No, that would come underneath us as well. Our subsidiary based in India is Optilon India Limited. And we've installed, hundreds of systems throughout the really globally, thousands and thousands of cameras. So we do have that capability in-house already. So again, depending on what the end user is requiring or, is interested in, we bring those services to bear. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing I can mention too, there's a seismic capability as well. We were working with the University of Arizona on an intelligent rock bolt. And the system is essentially like a smart ceiling bolt that can detect, stress and strain that would translate into, movement within the ceiling, and, possibly alerting, to, a ceiling collapse, in advance. It's hard to predict, the speed of a ceiling collapse, but we would be able to see the movements and the seismic and information in the ceiling by using what we're calling as an intelligent rock bolt. So again, a lot of different applications for the system. And the interesting thing, it's essentially the same hardware for every deployment. So whether we're looking at stress strain or we're looking at temperature, it's the same hardware. So we're not having stacks and stacks of hardware there. It's all rack mountable. So it could be, any type of, like different safety rooms with power. We can actually install, the server rack there with the system. So again, very easy deployment, although nothing is always easy, but fairly easy deployment, and then multiple capabilities. And the last thing I'll just mention too in this question is with the dark pulsing technique, we're able to do temperature, stress, and strain, and on the same fiber. Other systems have a cross sensitivity between stress, strain, and temperature. They can't do, all three on the same fiber. They have to use different fibers, sometimes multiple runs of cables. With our system, we can actually detect both because the dark pulsing technique, part of it actually eliminates this cross sensitivity between temperature and stress and strain. So there's just another benefit of the dark pulsing capability.
Hmm. And how do you price the services? Is it per meter of installation or per hour of work or fixed fee, or how do you quote your work?
Yeah, generally by kilometer, and again, depending on what we're going into. Um, a good example of different industry, oil and gas pipeline, different levels of monitoring there, where if it's leak detection, it's a straight run of multiple straight runs of fiber, let's say for 100 kilometers, whereas the system can also do or detect internal pitting and corrosion. So we could do like a pre-buckling alert, internal structural changes before there's actually a leak. And that requires a little bit more fiber and for the fiber cable to be epoxied onto the pipeline itself. So the price range per kilometer depends again on what the end user is looking for. But generally we price it by kilometer. And it's almost like a time and materials type of contract.
Do you think there's application for your fiber optic cable in data centers? Because they're very sensitive to airflow and temperature and that
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah, most definitely. Because you have the hot row, cool row situation in all data centers. And you've got cable everywhere. And it would be shorter runs. Like when I talk about dirty cable, because we're talking sometimes hundreds or thousands of kilometers of fiber, the dirtier the better. Because over time, as any pulse of light goes along a sensing cable, it loses its efficiency, it loses its power. So in something like that, yeah, inside of a data room, it can also do fire detection because we're doing temperature detection. And as I just mentioned, we also have the highest resolution in temperature detection. We can detect changes of a half a degree centigrade. That's just not out there. So yeah, the reality is, yeah, we could do temperature and airflow in data centers. And I think maybe more interesting, fire detection as well.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Yeah, you mentioned one or two gentlemen that you work with. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about the management structure of the company.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very typical. I mean, we have a board of directors. Two gentlemen have experience in U.S. government contracting, government work, and then Anthony Brown is also on the board. So he's again the science part of it. I'm on the board as well. I like to say I'm the conduit between science and business, the connector, and that's kind of where I've always kind of positioned myself because there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of good technologies out there, but a lot of the times, especially in the university setting, it's very difficult for them to actually commercialize those, and that sort of was my specialty right up until I found this dark pulsing patents, and then I went in 100% into a dark pulse. Previously, I was working with other universities to help them with the commercialization of their IP. Uh, so um, so we have a good mix on the board, and then of course, we actually utilize a CFO service. It's more efficient, but so we essentially have an offsite CFO. I'll call them. We have a chief commercialization officer, and then a COO as well, and then myself. I'm the CEO slash CFO of the company as well. And then in India, we have a full team there. There's project managers, there's salespeople, there's technologists. I'll say, in terms of programming, and there's an engineering section of it. So we have engineers as well on staff, and a similar situation in Turkey as well too. Although more of sales engineering staff in Turkey. So pretty well-rounded. And then, the one-off kind of situations, then we do look at subcontracting those opportunities.
Mhm. I didn't check. What are the revenues roughly?
So So our revenues, we were ramping up pretty well. We were at about 9 million in revenue. We're still, I guess, under a startup category. I hate that word because it seems like you're, just out of the egg. But currently with the reset, we're below a 500,000 in revenue. We just completely reset. We jettisoned some of our subsidiaries and then repurchased back assets. So this is almost like a relaunching of the company. So we have some revenues. Those are going to be based in India for right now. And the company right now has a couple of demonstration opportunities. We're working two, well, actually three, a downhole for well monitoring. We're working a perimeter security opportunity in Europe. And we're also working a national border security in the Middle East. So again, it's sort of a reset. So no significant revenues at the moment.
Okay. How did you come to decide to put a lot of assets in Turkey and maybe India as well?
It was actually, we had purchased Optalon, the parent company in the UK, and those subsidiaries were created by the UK company. They're also were in Abu Dhabi, and again, it was just actually the situation was, and unfortunately, I've heard this happen a couple of times to companies where there was a loss on a major contract, which just made them financially not viable in the UK. So essentially, we had to jettison some of the subsidiaries. We ended up purchasing back some of the assets or certain assets, and of the assets, it was the India group because of the engineering and sales capabilities, and then also the Turkey group again because of their past performances in Europe. One being a 11 to 1200 kilometer pipeline called the Trans-Angolian pipeline. So those are the two pieces of the original company that were more attractive to us because of the capabilities and because of the past performances. So that's how we ended up in India and Turkey.
Okay. And is Professor Brown or Mr. Brown, is he still inventing? Is he still broadening and further developing the patent portfolio that you have?
Yes, yeah, actually, there's ongoing research and development, R&D. We have a manufacturing partner that helps with some of the R&D as well. There's some different flavors, I'll call it, of the hardware that we're doing. We're essentially now it's a base model, I'll call it, and then there's external, like other manufacturers' hardware that we utilize, like a CPU, basically a CPU or server, let's say, and then like a router and things like that. So what we're actually doing is we offer the baseline now because there's certain companies that like certain brand names that they want in terms of a PC or in terms of a router. But what we're doing is we're adding again another flavor where we have the PC embedded into the hardware unit. And then a third also has a PC card, but also the router embedded as well. So you can have it with, just base unit again. You can use, other peripherals, we'll say, of hardware that maybe from another manufacturer that you, prefer. The second level up, kind of gives you a little bit more I guess included, and again, price point is a little bit better. Then again, the third, includes everything, and again, the price point's a little bit better than going out and kind of adding other manufacturer type of hardware to the deployment. So the whole idea is to, I guess, give options is kind of why we're doing it that way, because we've seen in the past certain deployments, people do like certain pulse generators from a different company or a PC, things of that nature. So again, we're giving you the choice. You can add your preference, or you can go with the all in one unit kind of situation. So,
Very good. Very nice. So thank you very much, Dennis. I think we're
oh yeah,
at the half an hour point here.
oh
So
okay,
very much appreciate you coming on and introducing yourself and introducing DarkPulse, and we wish you a lot of
yeah, thank you.
success.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the invite.
You're welcome.